My heart rate is up right now. I want to run. This is my flight mode kicking in, my sympathetic nervous system. For most of us, standing on a stage in front of an audience, we're going to react in a similar kind of way. The environment is inducing a sense of fear. My amygdala is overprotecting me from potential danger. There's no actual physical danger here. There is emotional danger, though. If I put myself out there and I'm not well received, I might be rejected, and that's very frightening. I might be ostracized, banished, left to die. A little dramatic, but that's essentially what's going on. So we adapt our behaviour. We hide our true emotions. We don't do TED Talks. No. If I did TED Talks all the time, they might become a walk in the park. But I'm much more relaxed walking in a park. Yes, I work with children and young people. I'm a therapist. And my talk, what I want to talk to you today is about how the environment affects us. I discovered that by allowing access to the outdoors and nature, and by providing freedom of choice, I could improve things in therapy. We can create a physically and physiologically safe and nurturing environment by thinking outside the confines of the traditional indoor-only setting. I am going to mention some clients during my talk. When I do, I'm careful to use pseudonyms, and they are composite cases for confidentiality. 15-year-old Kate had back and knee pain. She had stomach pain. She wasn't sleeping well. She had anxiety, OCD, ADHD. She had intrusive thoughts, depression. Various medical professionals prescribed pills for this or that, but only one doctor actually stopped to consider whether the root cause could be emotional. Kate was sent for some therapy sessions at her local hospital. Kate's heart rate sped up. Despite the therapist's best efforts, Kate never felt safe enough to engage in the work. And so she did her best. She struggled on. She pushed her emotions down. Her wall of defences built up higher and higher around her. Manic defence, perfectionism, self-blame, highly critical inner voice. She took on more and more responsibility. She couldn't ask for help. Kate wasn't a client of mine, and Kate isn't a pseudonym. Kate is me. I needed that help, that therapist, but I couldn't quite reach them. They couldn't quite reach me. I think it's fair to say that most therapists have experienced some kind of trauma or emotional struggle in their life. Most are a bit of a closed book. It's part of the job. But I'm Kate Beckwith, and I'm going to share some of myself, some of my story, and how I came to open my pioneering psychotherapy practice. It's called Kate's Garden, and it's the only practice of its kind in the UK. It has the indoor therapy room, but it also has access to the outdoors, nature, animals, art, play, and most significantly, freedom of choice for my clients. Children and young people are having a really tough time at the moment. Over the last 7 years, the number of children and young people struggling with poor mental health has nearly doubled. This is in part due to the technological revolution and a lack of meaningful connection to each other, to ourselves, and to nature, to the real world. We have become a society of individuals functioning within our buildings, within our little rooms, within our little screens. Free outdoor play has reduced, and self-harm is on the rise. NHS stats show that in the last decade, there have been 70% less outdoor accidents and 93% more incidents of self-harm in children and young people. We can't just teach our children how to cope with this fast-paced world, nor can we just medicate them or tell parents to send them outside. We must adapt to meet the evolving needs of our youth in today's world and in the future. I'm going to share how. Therapy has become more acceptable and accessible than ever. There are so many different therapeutic modalities out there. Some of them sound really cool. Others, hands up, I have literally no idea, and I'm a therapist. Some of them are so niche. They really respond to the different types of human and the different types of need. That's why there are so many. All humans are different. Different things engage us, excite us, scare us, make us feel safe. You might look at one of these and think, let's take, for example, equine-assisted therapy. You might think that that sounds really cool. That same therapy for you? Absolute nightmare. You might be paralyzed by the choice, and you might think, art therapy sounds nice, but you're pretty sure you're no good at art, so you don't go. A client of mine might enjoy art indoors, and then as the therapy progresses, they go outside into nature as their world begins to open up. Because I follow curiosity, I create the space for it. And curiosity, well, it's innate. It's in all of us. It drives everything. All we really need to do is create the space for it. By responding to the individual, removing the boundaries and opening the doors, we can create an environment in which children can be themselves and feel safe. We offer containment in this way without control, responding to children's natural instincts, their need to make decisions, to move, to feel, to express. When I was a child, I loved nature and art and animals. I always wanted a farm, that was the dream. I actually went off to university to do art, and while I was there, I explored the world and I found my place within it, or I began to. When I finished, I went into arts education. I loved my job. I got to put on workshops for a whole range of different people, students, teachers, families. And it was during this time that I discovered something very, very interesting. That whenever sessions had a nature element, an element of the outdoors, and an element of choice, people thrived. One of my family days, actually, it was called Paint in the Park. It had hundreds and hundreds of families on the waiting list. I was onto something. In my personal life, I had experienced profound loss, and I was raising my son as a lone parent. I tentatively began looking for a partner. Now, this took a very long time. Remember my walls? Very high? Yeah. Well, one guy described me as fiercely independent. Yeah. Which at the time I took as a compliment. On reflection, it was not meant as a compliment. No. So I pushed on, I worked very hard, I renovated a couple of houses, and I made enough money to put an offer in on a piece of land, the small holding dream. But just before I put the offer in, I met Mark, and I told him my plans for a therapy farm with art and animals for children on our first date. Now, this went down quite well, and I knew Mark was the real deal. And me being me and not one to mess around, I actually asked him on our first date if he wanted to go halves on a farm with me. Straight off the bat. He said, I'm not saying yes or no, but I think we should go on a second date. Yes, yes. So we did, that went well too, and we blended our family. I trained as a therapist, and the training and my personal therapy changed my life. I basically worked with Mark to renovate this house and the land. The land was beautiful, woodland trees. We got pigs, ponies, goats, chickens, guinea pigs, a small holding, but still very much a garden. And it was precious during lockdown especially, and I knew I must share this and incorporate it into my therapy. But there was nothing like this out there. Psychodynamic psychotherapy incorporating the nature, animals, art, play, and freedom of choice. And so I set up my practice with no blueprint. Now, when we're training as a therapist, we hear the phrase, in the room with the client, all the time. That first session with my first paying client, I really felt as if I were doing something wrong. I wasn't. 7-year-old Jake was in care, and he had experienced a very painful start to life. Jake had refused school and refused therapy, but he agreed to come to Kate's garden. Now, he ran into the garden when he first arrived. He needed that space in order to feel safe, and he felt a little safer still when he saw my maternal side engaging with the animals. We started playing in the garden, and he directed me to be the monster chasing him. When I was chasing him, he was re-experiencing something truly terrifying in this safe space with me. And then when he turned on me and chased me fast, I really experienced a little of what he experienced running for his life. That wouldn't have been possible in an indoor setting. Jake wouldn't have gone in the first place, but if he did, likely would have shut down straight away. Here, things were on his terms, and I was able to help him and begin to understand him and see him really very quickly. What we need to do is help our children into rest and digest. And we do that by helping them to feel safe. And we do that by giving them the freedom to choose. And often that choice involves them going out into nature where their cortisol, our stress hormone, reduces. Our anxiety levels drop, our heart rates slow, putting us into the physiological position ready to connect and do the work. Nature can also provide some beautiful, beautiful analogies and interruptions. This interruption is one of my favourites. 16-year-old Lisa had been in a traditional indoor setting for 3 years before coming to see me. Progress had been very slow. It was a complex presentation: autism, ADHD, self-harm, various phobias, lots and lots of stimming. Lisa was isolated and detached, and despite being a very happy, very vocal child, she had been silent for the last 3 years. She had run away from home multiple times. Lisa thrived at Kate's garden. She explored every part of it, every tiny insect, each little flower. Nature helped slow everything down. And it also created this sense of belonging. Now, when a frog jumped out from the long grass, we were both shocked, but Lisa let out a shriek. I can't tell you what that noise sounded like. This beautiful shock, this interruption, this spontaneity, this real-world experience just would not have been possible in an indoor setting. The shriek was followed by laughter and a beautiful moment of connection between us. The shriek, it just burst out of her. She had to communicate it. In the weeks and the months that followed, the words began to flow. Lisa began connecting and speaking with her family again. Connection isn't something that happens when we plan it. Connection hits us out of nowhere. We just need to be ready. We connect with children and young people by meeting them where they are. We restrict the capacity for connection and closeness when we restrict the environment. And as individuals, we restrict the capacity for closeness and connection when we don't share our actual needs and preferences, when we push our emotions down, when we mask. We begin to encourage that important process of supporting children to share their needs and preferences by allowing choices. And we can encourage them to become their own authentic self. And science, it tells us what we already know. The benefits of movement, of physical activity on our well-being. Our bodies help us process our emotions. We know the benefits of being outdoors, of being in nature, of creative expression, of movement. We know all of this. Dopamine, serotonin, endorphins, oxytocin, all the good stuff. I'm going to leave you with this idea that we must incorporate what we know is good for our children into the provisions and services, the health and well-being, the education, the town planning. We describe children as climbing the walls, so let's take them away. I'm not saying we knock all the buildings down. I've not totally lost it. I'm just saying let's open the doors. Let them decide and let them be curious about who they are and about the world. There was no Kate's Garden or anything like it when I was a child. There is now. And I intend to share my findings and help revolutionize therapy for children. I could keep my story to myself, keep Kate's Garden to myself, keep the walls high. But I'm opening the doors, and I'm becoming an open book. And I'm writing one, or at least trying to. Healing is partly about becoming the person we needed as a child. I'm doing that partly by revolutionizing therapy for children. So I hope that I inspire some of you to be brave, to take the plunge, and to incorporate nature and outdoors and freedom of choice into whatever you offer. Whether you are a student, a parent, an educator, a therapist, whoever you are, whatever you do, open the doors. Thank you so much for listening.